What do you think about these at-home red light products and everything that goes around them?
Yeah, I actually personally use the larger panels. And red light therapy, it's actually part of this world called biohacking. And there's a lot of people these days who, myself included, I see this as the future of the medical
I do too.
Adding all of these different things to support our cells. So I've never personally been a huge fan of wearing a red light mask because I sort of feel like you look like a stormtrooper from Star Wars. And I would actually much prefer to stand in front of a panel for about 10 minutes on each side, do my front, do my face, neck, chest, whole upper body, flip around, get my whole back. And because different light frequencies do different things, and there's actually a number of studies on red light and what it actually does for the mitochondria of the skin.
Well, hello, audience. And this is Fashion Thursdays with Diane. And today we have an incredible guest, Rachel Varga, who is all about rejuvenation and becoming your best self in the moment through your skin and how that changes your whole aura. She is a double board certified aesthetic nurse specialist, and she specializes in rejuvenation sessions. And so I say, welcome, Rachel. I am so glad to have you here. And I have a million questions to ask you, but the first one is going to be foundational for this podcast. What exactly is rejuvenation and how do you approach it? Because I see so many different claims and promises made in the beauty industry that it really has your head whirling around. So how do you activate rejuvenation and where do you start and what does it mean for the client?
Oh, I love this question, Diane. Thanks so much for asking it. I've actually published some papers on eye rejuvenation and jawline rejuvenation and the algorithm in which I recommend approaching it. Now, there's a couple of different reasons why we might consider rejuvenation. Sun damage, so photoaging, brown spots, broken capillaries, skin redness, fine lines, wrinkles, sagging to the skin, loss of volume.
I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here. So I have all of it.
We all experience these things as we age, and there's some things that we can do behind the scenes to actually slow that down, which I'm happy to share. But in regards to rejuvenation, it's typically addressing those key things, and I like to call these things our skin goals. And there's lots of different ways to go about this. The way that I recommend starting is actually with a really good customized skincare routine, what we're doing day in, day out at home with our AM routine or PM routine, maybe adding even in some dermal rolling to get some collagen happening in the skin and doing that heavy lifting even before considering in-clinic rejuvenation.
Do you do laser? Do you consider laser a form of resculpting, tightening the jawline? I know that, and it was terrifying. The first time I went for Botox, and I remember saying to my assistants, I'm going to get fish poison pumped in my face. You may never see me again. Okay, got over that drama. But my dermatologist actually pulls out my neck and puts Botox into my neck, which sounds terrifying, audience, but actually lifts you up and firms you. And it's like a miracle, I swear. So what are the elements that you use? Because I'm used to laser and Botox.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to.
We call these non-surgical rejuvenation options. And there's injectable options, so neuromodulators and fillers. And what you're talking about is a neuromodulator into your platysma bands. And in my jawline paper, I actually talk about this and I teach other practitioners how to do this too. So that can be done. It's considered off-label though. And then there's also the filler component, which restores lost volume. And then there's the laser component. When it comes to sculpting the face, it depends on what's happening. So say, for example, for you, Diane, in your neck area and your jawline, maybe it was some of the muscles that were popping out that were maybe bothering you. So there's an option for that. If it's, say, the jowls, there's an option for that. If it's, say, loose, sagging skin, there's an option for that. So it really depends what you're going for. I always recommend working on the health of the skin first. And different lasers, yes, claim to lift and tighten. I do have some opinions on that. And other lasers are really great at stimulating collagen and helping to reduce the sun damage, so the browns and the reds.
Yes, that's a lot of what I go for, but also doing a laser that I remember the first time she did it, Rachel, I said, did you have a hamburger for lunch? Because I smell cooked meat. And she said, oh no, that's just your skin and your hair.
It's your own personal barbecue. Whoa.
I was like,
yeah,
I don't know about this, but it was workable. One thing she said, obviously we would all like fuller cheekbones and bigger lips, and that's a lot of what is done with fillers. But she said that your temples, as you age, lose volume, and she feels that a goal of looking more vital is to put some of that volume back. I would like to attest to the fact that getting filler is one of the weirdest things. To me, having that fluid inside and then having it manipulated all around to be in the right shape and stuff, it's workable, but it's so strange. And I'm going to ask you one big question. Does beauty equal discomfort and pain?
No, it doesn't. To get back to what you were smelling actually in your laser session, different lasers have different targets. So the laser you were likely having, the target was water within the skin, which helps to create this contraction to tell the fibroblasts to make elastin and collagen. So it helps with like thickening up the skin. And then there's other lasers that they have a different target, which is the reds and the browns. So that's the one you had. We call that a plume. And yes, it does smell like your own personal barbecue. So I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Oh, your little hairs are burning off.
Oh yeah, there's that too. Yeah.
I had to get used to all of this. It was so bizarre for me.
That's one of the sort of adjunct benefits to getting certain lasers done. There's so many lasers on the market. Certain ones do different things. I have opinions on all of them. And you can actually get some hair removal if those hairs are darker, which is great, especially for women in menopause or postmenopause or even perimenopause. We get these little whiskers. And so getting that hair removal can be, something that's done simultaneously or achieved rather. But I'm really glad that you mentioned fillers, Diane. I'm really glad that you mentioned this because
they're workable. I see so many older women, Rachel, who almost have a round face and those fish lips because they put so many fillers in. But I am so conservative about it. These are actually my own cheekbones, but the basic place for filler for me is at the temples. And I don't know what you call these two lines that come down. But
yeah, I'd love to speak on temple filling. I come from a background in oculoplastics. Since 2011, I've performed over 20,000 rejuvenation procedures. I teach other doctors and nurses, write research papers on this stuff. And what we find is that there's always a new way to use something. But we find out a couple of years down the road that maybe that wasn't the best way to use it. So things like tear trough fillers or temple filling have actually been pretty new over the last few years. And what we find, and I'm not going to say this to scare those listening, But fillers can move, they can migrate, they can block lymphatic drainage,
Yes.
but you can also get great
Yes.
results with it. The concern I have with fillers to the temples is that it can migrate actually around the eye and get into the behind the eye, and we can actually see this on MRI. Same with tear trough filling. So actually in my eye rejuvenation paper, this is why I wrote this paper, because I was seeing so many issues from these new techniques. You were seeing celebrities.
I have that issue.
Yeah.
I have that issue, Rachel. You know, here's what happened. I was still on TV, and one of my favorite hosts that I work with, very, 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 very thin. As she aged, the sockets got so noticeable. One thing I will say before I put this story into reality is never bargain shop for a rejuvenation.
Never, ever, yeah.
Ever. So anyway, she bargain shopped. I think, I'm not even sure she did it in America. I think she might have done it in Dominican Republic or something. So she got filler put into her under eye sockets, and then it started to bubble. And then it looked like tapioca pudding, like a series of lumps. And she went back to them, and they basically said, hey, that's the name of the game. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And she had to live with that for like 8 months and being on air almost every day. I got it done, and I found that it created bigger areas of lumps and separated. And it was actually something I never wanted to do, but it was like, oh, you really should. It's going to really smooth you out. And I'm always adventurous about this stuff. I'm still living out the results of it a year later.
Yeah, we started to see this with a lot of celebrities. They had this sort of like worm look of filler. It was basically from a newer technique that was being preached from the mountaintops. And so a number of years later, we saw what was happening. And filler, when it's placed, it can look really great. However, what we don't think is when filler's placed, say, in the tear trough area, and every new injector who wants me to train them, they want to learn tear trough. And I'm like, nope, that's the last thing you want to do. But when filler's placed here, actually the fat pads and the bone and the collagen and elastin in the skin, they will age, and it will actually age at a different rate than the filler that was applied. It can take quite a bit of time for filler to break down there. But there's also this component of the puffy pillow face, which occurs when there's too much filler applied or there's blockage of the lymphatic drainage. Now, the interesting nuance with the eyes is that the way that the lymph moves around the eyes is actually in the lower eyelid area. So if you put filler in there, you're going to get, maybe some swelling. So the approach that I recommend taking instead to rejuvenate the eyes, which is the first area of the face that shows signs of aging, is your skincare at home, maybe doing some dermal rolling, then maybe getting into different lasers. And there's so many different lasers on the market. I won't get into specifics because I can't make broad claims like that. And then maybe injectables or surgery.
Oh, so I decided at a certain point that, and it really came from COVID, I didn't want to go to a spa and get treatments anymore. I didn't want people bending over me and breathing on me. I know it sounds crazy, but true. And I was approached by a company called Lima out of Europe, out of the UK. They came out with first red light handheld laser. I liked it as opposed to a laser mask because I could target and not just passively put on a red light mask and sit there for 10 minutes. And it really seemed to make a difference. Age spots, way gone. Firmness, I definitely noticed it. But then they came out with supplements that they said were for the 40 plus, 50 plus woman that would put all kinds of minerals and benefits to your body because as you age, you're losing the ability to ingest and use correctly what you eat. And then they came out with a serum and a kind of a cream, a lotion that you put on your face after the red light, and that is supposed to rebuild everything. Now, Rachel, is rebuilding from the inside. Everything is, oh, you're going to get all this collagen growth. And yeah, talk to me about that. I thought, ooh, a total universe of skincare sounds really good to me. I'm very disciplined about using it, and I think the results are good, but I still don't think they match going to a professional like you and getting real assessment and real treatment. What do you think about these at home red light products and everything that goes around them?
Yeah, I actually personally use the larger panels. And red light therapy, it's actually part of this world called biohacking. And there's a lot of people these days who, myself included, I see this as the future of the medical
I do too.
Adding all of these different things to support our cells. So I've never personally been a huge fan of wearing a red light mask because I sort of feel like you look like a stormtrooper from Star Wars. And I would actually much prefer to stand in front of a panel for about 10 minutes on each side, do my front, do my face, neck, chest, whole upper body, flip around, get my whole back. And because different light frequencies do different things, and there's actually a number of studies on red light and what it actually does for the mitochondria of the skin. So I'm a fan of that. And when it comes to at-home technologies, you really want to make sure it's third-party independent lab tested, and then it gives a result. So I like to sleep very well at night, Diane. So if I'm going to be making recommendations for my clients, I want to know that they're going to be giving them the results that they're after. So I wouldn't go so far as to say that an at-home piece of technology is as good as an in-clinic piece of technology, because it's sort of comparing something at a few $100 price point with a tool to, say, $150,000 price point.
Exactly. I think the strength, number one, is different. And I think that's why my derm always says, how do you feel today? Do you have some tolerance for pain? Because red light in an office setting is likely going to hurt. And I'm very sensitive to it. So I get it where I walk out of the office looking like I've been a victim in Death Valley. I've been tied down for 2 days and gotten this massive sunburn, but then it goes away. But some people like to go all the way down. And that leads me to something I just want to ask you. I was always confronted by women who said, oh, nothing works like a chemical peel. You're so old-fashioned, Diane. You should be getting a chemical peel. I would never do that. Has that kind of torture gone out of style, or are people still doing that to get, that was always explained to me, Rachel, as the ultimate form of rejuvenation. You strip off all the layers of the skin, and so, of course, what grows back is like a baby's skin, but I've seen it go wrong, too, and when it goes wrong, it goes really wrong. What is your opinion about chemical peels?
Well, it's never going to be one thing that really is going to address what you're after. So before really doing anything in the clinic, I always like to suggest really stabilizing the skin barrier first at home with a great routine. And I'm happy to share what that looks like. Now, an interesting nuance here, Diane, that I'm sure everyone listening is curious to hear about: chemicals, chemical peels, right? We hear the word chemical and we're like, that's not good. However, this hot water, honey, and lemon, these are all chemicals. Water is a chemical. It's the combination of oxygen and hydrogen. It makes a chemical, two atoms coming together. So what matters actually are those chemicals good for us, or are they bad for us? And there are some really lovely, gentle chemical peels on the market that have some great actives. And then there's also some really strong ones, like a fennel peel, for example, that you're down and out for a month. And, there can be some issues with your liver and kidneys with those ones.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So is it going to be just a chemical peel? No. I would say to really address the skin from many aspects, with thickening up the skin with collagen and elastin, improving the skin tone and discoloration, and revolumizing and maybe tweaking some muscles, it's always going to be this multifaceted approach. And I'm glad that you're bringing this up, Diane.
I take collagen every day. Am I doing a good thing for myself, or am I just fooling myself?
Actually, what the research shows is about 10 to 12 grams of collagen a day is what's been found to provide visible results. And unfortunately, when people take collagen, they think, oh, it's going to deposit right in the nasolabial fold. It's not. It's actually, it's going to go throughout your body. But personally, I actually have collagen and a scoop of protein in my morning coffee here. I take collagen all day, every day, eat quite a bit of meat as well. So I'm getting that protein up. And you mentioned minerals earlier. It's so important that we also consider the foods that we're eating.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because a lot of foods actually are anti-nutrient and can actually deplete the body of essential minerals and vitamins.
Like what? Like what?
Yeah, there's foods that are high in what's called phytic acid and oxalates. So those are typically like the nightshades. And
what are nightshades?
Nightshades are like kale and tomatoes and bell peppers. And sometimes that can actually create a little bit of inflammation in some people. So when it comes to nutrition and the diet, we can actually test instead of guess what we're eating now, which is, I would say, a little bit more of a sophisticated approach than, what's the best skin diet? What's the best diet for longevity? Because it actually depends on your DNA and your epigenetics and what your body needs now.
But if you are not a woman who is able to go get all this testing and has the time to get so finite, for me, number one, everybody made me feel so guilty about saying, I hate kale. I hate everything about kale. I don't want to eat it. Oh, Diane, you're really missing out.
Oh, it's a superfood, right?
Yeah. Seriously. And then the other thing that I do, which I don't necessarily love all the time, is to make sure at least once a week I'm going to eat fresh salmon. Not farm-raised salmon, but wild salmon. I think that the omega-3s are good. And the other thing that I believe, and this has been a lifelong belief, is processed food is that I think there is probably maybe I have one bag of something here that's processed, but I was also never a fast food eater. So now they're finding that if you grew up on fast foods, chances are you're going to have a lot of health problems later in life. You are not going to live as long. And whatever longevity you have is going to be riddled with issues. So for that, if anybody ever asks me, how are you so vital at 79 years old? Diet plays a major role in my life. My weight and my diet. And I don't want to be dragging around an extra 30 or 40 pounds when my skeletal mass is probably much less dense, especially because of chemotherapy and my age, than it was when I was, say, 40. So weight is a major issue. And the nutrients I can put into my body, I crave simple, direct foods. A nicely done piece of salmon. I'm going to admit it. I do eat red meat about twice a month. I make sure it's a really good cut. And I have no guilt. I enjoy every moment of it. And people tell me all the time, oh, you should be eating red meat constantly. You know what, Rachel? Everybody's got another opinion. And yet nobody has lived as long as I have. So when somebody 30 tells me, you should be eating red meat every day, I'm thinking, do you have any idea what it's like to be walking around in this old skeletal body of mine? Come on. I think you have to either have a doctor, a medical presence like you that understands how to marry science to aesthetics, or you have to really be someone who listens closely to your own internal body and rhythm.
And the patients of mine and clients I've worked with, for many years across the globe, the ones that do the best, that are the most vibrant, that are the most radiant, actually are aged 60 to 95.
Oh,
yes. They actually, when they do certain things like their skincare, I see them doing dermal rolling, healthy living. They have a beautiful family life. They do things that light them up, different hobbies, being in community, having fun with life, faith, family, fitness, finances, freedom, all of those things really can contribute to not only how someone looks, but how we feel has a big impact on how we look. So if we're stressed out all the time and furrowing our brows and squinting and all of these things, your state internally is going to show up and present itself on his face, on your face.
Now, I represent a skincare line called Purity Woods, and they are all about everything organic. And the reason why it made sense to me, although I have no scientific knowledge that it makes a difference, but I only eat organic. I don't want all those extra chemicals and bug killers and God knows what is going on there. I don't want any of that in my body. I have enough bad habits, like making a microwave meal and doing it in a plastic container. Yeah, laziness, that's what that is. How do you gauge the importance of having an organic skincare regime on your face as opposed to mass produced, like say, I had a terrible reaction, by the way, to, I'm going to say oil of Olay. I had a terrible reaction to it. I broke out in a red rash from it, and everyone said, "You're just a snob. You just want to use La Mer all the time." But I'm sorry, maybe I'm just sensitive. So how does organics play into skincare and rejuvenation?
Yeah, I would say as much organic as possible in everything that you have around your body, in your body, on your body. Now, there's a nuance here, though. And in my experience, I've worked with thousands of clients over the years. I actually work with about 18 different skincare product lines. And every line I find has a superstar and a couple of duds. So it's my job to sort through that and, make the highest recommendations I can for someone based on what their needs are. So that's why it's always difficult for me to say, this skincare product is going to be great for everybody. I actually can't say that.
No,
it depends.
It can't be.
Yeah, it depends.
Yeah, it can't be. I recently somebody contacted me to represent a product called Banish. And it's all about acne scars and dark spots. I didn't like the packaging. I'm so snobby about this stuff. And then I said, okay, I'm going to try it. And 2 out of 5 of the products, it was a vitamin C cream and a Banish Away Dark Spots remover, actually worked. But I could use them on my hands because old lady hands are a big tip off about your age. So I always take as good care of the top of my hands and my neck as I do for my face. So it all matches. It doesn't look like these are free floating 80-year-old hands
I'm so
on a
glad you
60-year-old
mentioned
hand.
that because we've sort of seen this era of the floating head syndrome where, women have had lasers, they use retinol like every night, and the face on their skin, especially from certain lasers over the years, can make the skin look thin like an eggshell. So different things do different things and have different outcomes, and it takes a while to evaluate that. But what I want to mention for you, Diane, that's I think a helpful tip for you, is whatever you're doing to your face, do to your neck, do to the sides of the neck, do to the entire chest area, even the top of the shoulders, inner arms, and your hands. So you're on the money there. I would just make those couple of tweaks and basically, look at this as one unit. And same with rejuvenation too. We don't want to just focus on the face. We want to look at other things. And
when I was deciding to come on air and do podcasting, I decided to look at a lot of the high-end female anchors on news shows and who are wearing really good clothing and obviously have a good hairdresser. And what I found so many times was their face would look great and their neck and hands looked 30 years older. And so I think one of the really important points I would get across is you have got to see yourself as a 360-degree point of view. It can't, unless you're going to constantly do portraits where you're cut off right under the chin. I will always say to myself when I'm looking at those women, my God, lady, look at yourself in a camera. Your neck has nothing to do with your face, and it wrecks the whole point. Yet I find, I'm going to ask you one last question as we start to wrap up. And I put the same moisturizers on my neck and my décolleté and the top of my hands that I put on my face. But do you think that that is really workable? I see these specialized creams out there for your neck. Do you believe that they're actually different and more effective, or it's just a marketing ploy?
Well, I'm glad that you asked me this because, yes, I put on my eye cream and my neck cream and my face moisturizer and my...
You do? Okay.
And the reason why is the eyes, an eye cream is typically a little richer than, say, a face cream. And since the eyes show the signs of aging first, we want to spend a little extra attention. And with antioxidants and peptides and humectants and hyaluronic acid and vitamin C and all these things. And then for the neck, a couple of times a week, I like to use something that just has a little bit more oomph to it, some more actives, because even people in their 20s, we have this line here from looking down. The horizontal bones are...
We call it the tech neck.
Yeah, we call it the tech neck. You're right.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things I really wanted to mention about organic skincare, you also mentioned processed foods. And one of the big issue with processed foods are rancid oils. So say, for example, low quality oils like canola oil and things like that. And so when it comes to making any skincare formula, like an organic formula, you need to make sure that those actives like the oil and the vitamin C, they're not going rancid. So that's why it's so key to do your due diligence. Who's behind the company, who's creating it? Is it already lab tested?
Now, I've done my due diligence, but you don't agree with me. So final question. Yes, there must be something about spending more money on face maintenance that encourages me to buy it. Like, if it's more expensive, it must be great. And then I saw a series of commercials from Oil of Olay saying, oh, you don't need that la 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 face cream. We have all the same products and we're just as good. Number one, I am not going to believe that $300 a jar is not going to be superior to $15 a jar. And second of all, I love La Mer. And you said, eh. So tell me what your opinion is of the different price points of creams, because you know what? It's a free world today. Anybody can say anything. So they say, yeah, you don't need that big fancy face cream. For $10 a jar, we do the same thing. I don't know about that. Rachel, how do we discriminate? And why do you not love La Mer? I have to ask you that. I've used it all my life.
Publicly, I don't love La Mer. But what I will say is, it doesn't actually always matter how expensive something is or how inexpensive something is. There's some great eye creams and moisturizers that are well under $100 that have lots of antioxidants and peptides. The price point of a product is dependent on, how many actives are in this formula, how expensive was the formula to make. And I know this because I'm making products behind the scenes too. And then what the company decides to sell it as, what their branding is. Is it a luxury brand?
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that because something's more expensive, it's better. What I'd say is more important is if you're using something that's more specific to what your needs are. And if, say, a hyaluronic acid is actually at the right size of the molecule too. So just because you see hyaluronic acid doesn't necessarily mean it's going to do exactly what you're hoping it would be. So price point, more expensive doesn't mean better in my experience working with so many different, especially practitioner grade lines. And you can actually work with a really solid basic routine of cleansing, moisturizing, sunscreen, exfoliation for about $250 to $300, which would be the price.
I would agree with that as well. The hook for La Mer for me was the story behind it, that it was somebody who had terrible burns on their skin from World War I and somehow came to this conclusion about drying seaweed on rocks and then crushing it. And I bought the story. And actually, it served me pretty well. But the one thing that I would end this podcast with is something that I think, even though I'm the most unscientific person alive, and you are very scientific, we could both agree on. And that is, it isn't only what you put on topically. It's what you ingest. It's how purposeful and intentional you are, which is maybe not basking out in the sun 5 hours a day, every summer day. And it's about your level of satisfaction and joy in life and feeling purposeful about what you're doing as you're living your life through the many decades, all of which are unique and different. Well, Rachel, we could talk forever, and you are just a mountain of knowledge. And wow, thank you so much for being on Fashion Thursdays with Diane.
Aging is a privilege, and I love what you're doing, Diane. And I think more women need to hear this message that it's never going to just be one thing. It's going to be a number of different things that are going to support us in our aging process.
I always say, make you your favorite project. I'm always working on me as a project for aging better, for aging more gracefully, and aging more comfortably. And yes, you can keep your beauty well beyond the years you thought you could. There's so many choices out there, and that's where someone like Rachel Varga comes in to explain those choices to us. Well, it was a privilege to have you on. Learned a lot. Thank you so much, and best of luck.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you so much for listening to Too Young to Be Old podcast. The episode may be over, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at The Diane Gilman, or visit our website, thedianegilman.com. If you like the show, leave us a rating or a review, and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And until then, don't forget, age is just a number. Together, we'll prove that we are all too young to be old.